At the end of 2016, Neil Druckmann, creative director of The Last of Us, stated that the sequel to The Last of Us would be a game about hate. This statement describes my feelings on The Last of Us 2 perfectly, but not for the reasons that Mr. Druckmann and the team behind The Last of Us 2 may have wanted. The Last of Us 2 is the sequel to one of my favorite games of the PS3 era, and one of the few games I personally relate to, as it shows the lengths a father will go to prepare and protect a child under his charge. So it saddens me that I hate this game, not for the story not being what I would have wanted, but for the game itself being mediocre on a number of levels, including a weak, contrived, and manipulative plot that does its utmost to undermine one of the greatest interactive stories ever told in gaming. How does the game look? The Last of Us 2 is a beautiful game. Naughty Dog has created a marvel of graphical fidelity on the PS4. The environments, character models, animations, and lighting effects are amazing and complement the tone of whatever scene and events are taking place at the time. Character facial animations are believable and convey emotion in a way that very few games to this point have been able to achieve. The animations within gameplay and cutscenes are nearly seamless and really capture the brutality and weight of the combat. In short, this game is gorgeous. But how does it play? If you enjoyed the gameplay of the original Last of Us, well, you're in luck. The gameplay, for better or worse, is largely untouched. Very few gameplay elements have really been improved upon, and the addition of a jump button is situational at best. Naughty Dog's accessibility options for this title are second to none. Gameplay can be changed to fit almost any playstyle, whether you may be deaf or have any other types of maladies that prevent you from playing normally. Naughty Dog has you covered in this regard. However, things that have come back up and have not changed from The Last of Us Part 1 are the companion AI, which are still invisible to enemies and unstoppable, which takes away from the stakes of combat. The overall gameplay loop is unfortunately also extremely repetitive, and control is taken away from the player far too often for my liking. In particular, in many situations, you are made to kill all the enemies in many encounters when escaping would be far more prudent. QuickTime events happen far too often, and many of the moments I would have liked to experience myself are experienced via cutscene. The puzzles are done well, even if there is not a lot of variety between them. Combat is still fairly basic, with one button for attack, one button for dodge, and no stamina meter, making for unlimited melee strikes without fatigue. Stealth is one area where this title has been improved upon, allowing the player to go prone in tall grass, similar to the Metal Gear franchise. The biggest issue with the gameplay isn't what's offered, but the missed opportunities. For instance, the first environment, which is largely open world and hands down the most fun part of the game, is quickly taken away from the player, just as easily as it was given, and replaced with boring, scripted, linear scenes. Ultimately, the gameplay is a mix of gameplay elements that never quite rise above games that have used these elements better, such as open world gameplay, stealth, and third-person shooting. Now to address the elephant in the room, the story. The irony of a story in a story-based game being the weakest element of this title is not lost on me. If I had to summarize the story in a nutshell, it would be a 20-hour revenge tale stretched over 35 hours. The pacing and narrative direction are abysmal. The story has plot holes bigger than Jeffrey Epstein's Pedo Island. The characters that fans of the first title loved make choices that are completely contradictory to their character. One example of this is Joel telling a room full of strangers his name. Given his overly cautious nature displayed in the first game, this decision narratively makes no sense. In this title, not only are we treated to seeing Joel murdered by a murder-hungry, unlikable psychopath, but then you are forced to play as said murder-hungry, unlikable psychopath. Almost 15 hours of this game is dedicated to playing as the single most unlikable character in all of gaming. Abby, the jacked white female and Joel Slayer, is thrust upon you for hours and hours, while the writers try desperately to convince you she is a worthwhile human being, employing some of the most blatant emotional manipulation I have ever seen in any piece of fiction. Not only do they try to humanize this bodybuilding murder hulk, but also attempt to demonize Ellie as if her name were Daenerys Targaryen in Season 8 of Game of Thrones. So far as to put a pregnant woman in Ellie's path using mental gymnastics that would make a Scientologist blush. Having said forgettable pregnant character cleared for combat by a militia despite being visibly with child, just so she can haphazardly be placed in a situation to attack Ellie. Adding insult to injury with the claims that Naughty Dog has cornered the market on wokeness and diversity, all the interesting characters of color that we are introduced to, Jesse and Dina in particular, are either shoved to the side or outright killed. However, the most egregious part of this narrative is the use of flashbacks to give exposition. There were points in the game where I thought I was watching an episode of Lost. There were so many flashbacks. At one point in game, I was literally playing inside a flashback that then subsequently led me to 2 other flashbacks inside the original flashback. It was flashback inception, except the only idea the writers were trying to plant in my head was that I gave a damn about the Abby character. So, do I recommend this title? Well, The Last of Us 2 isn't a bad game, or a good game, and definitely not a masterpiece. It is a handful of meh in a beautiful wrapper that never lives up to the prestige of its predecessor, which is the saddest part of all. It reminds me of my favorite Bible verse. You were neither hot nor cold, so I spit you out.
I'll fucking kill you.
Whoa, what are you doing?
Okay. Remember, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.